We'll go ahead and call the monthly building and planning committee meetings of the board of directors to order at 1:02. Is there approval of the agenda? Nobody else has presented as okay.
It's okay. You don't need nothing else.
Yeah, it's unanimous. Scott should be okay. Item C is the public comment portion of the agenda. Is there any public comment? See anybody here? Item D is the approval of the minutes from the October 25th building and planning meeting. Has everybody had a chance?
Make a motion. Oh, we don't need to make a motion.
This one you do. Yeah.
Make a motion. We approve it as presented.
Okay, motion by Director Park. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director Clark. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Parks.
Yes.
Director Clark.
Yes.
Director Elconin.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes. That's four A's.
Process will be right there in a minute.
Okay. And moving on to item number 5 is the project update, and we'll start with the master plan, Mr. Easterday.
Okay, so yes, the architect is nearing completion on the corrections to resubmit the drawings. We're working on a few little challenges with HCI requires actual policies and processes for areas like the pharmacy. So we're working with the pharmacy staff and the new manager on clarifying the steps and processes that are required on the resubmittal. That's the main thing. Everything else is going fairly well. But I've been working on that this week related to little details about very specific little processes and steps that have to be documented in the actual resubmittal. As far as the anything else, let's see, we might as well talk about it here because we do not have it listed as a separate line item, but the application for FEMA for the possibility of getting some funding for this. All the documents are complete. Emily and I have been working very hard on those, probably Emily more than me, but both of us hours and many hours. All the documents are done. We have a last conference call with the Cal OES and consultants on tomorrow at noon. And if they approve all of our documents as written, then they will be submitted on Thursday, or any minor changes made and submitted on Thursday. So that is our drop dead date on that. The supervisors of Kern County met this morning and they passed the resolution for going in with us on the submittal for FEMA. So that is done. There will be a few documents to sign there with them. And we'll be working on those documents. And anyway, I mean, I will say this, we were real concerned that the benefit cost analysis was not coming in where it needed to be. But after working with the consultants and working on a lot of our documentation, those numbers have been modified to the point, because I think I told you that the BCA had to be more than one, or in our community that is, I always get the wrong term. Disadvantage, we had to be at a 0.75. We actually are currently at a 1.36 on our BCA. And we're then, and also because we're disadvantaged, we're allowed to use the analysis at 3%, which puts our score at a 2.45. So our score is very good now on the BCA. All of our documentation is together. The sub application has all, literally 30, 40 documents attached to it, plus all the drawings and plans and spec books, and everything is ready for submission, which hopefully we can hit send on that tomorrow. The one highlight was with one of the higher ups at Cal OES, one of the ladies in our conference calls, you know, we were really struggling at trying to get everything together, and they were working with us, and some of them were just saying, well, it's not going to work. And she said, no, we're going to make this work. We are going to find ways. She says, I truly want to fund this project. So, but then again, that's the person at Cal OES. Obviously, this has to now again go through their processes. Then they will submit to FEMA, which is in when, Emily?
January 25th.
January 25th, Cal OES submits their applications to FEMA. And then FEMA has, of course, months to go through all of the applications that will be coming in from all the way across the United States, with announcements being made in August, as we've discussed, of next year. So obviously, we're going to be in a wait process. We will find out for sure, I'm assuming in a couple of months, that Cal OES has forwarded our application to FEMA, and then we'll be in another period of months of waiting to see whether it gets funded. But so far, you know, we've been filling all these documents out. The consultants that Cal OES hired seem to be really sharp. They've made a lot of great recommendations, of which we have implemented 100% of those into all the documents. So, you know, all we can do is be somewhat optimistic that this will come through.
Sounds better. Sounds like you're doing a hell of a good job.
We're trying.
Do we cross our fingers all at the same time?
Yeah, it helps. It helps if we do it all on the count of three. Yes.
I think the nice part, I think this time is the state's backing.
Well, you got the numbers
Yeah.
good. You got really good.
Numbers are
Yeah, the
solid.
numbers are solid. You know, it was a challenge. There's a lot of detail. I mean, we're literally submitting, you know, hundreds of pages of plans and hundreds of pages of documentation for every last little nuance of everything. Everything has to be proven from documents and websites and various things. Just, it's crazy, but at least we're there. So,
Let's get all the help we can too as we go
Yeah,
along.
definitely.
yeah,
All right.
And I want to thank Emily too for all her help. She's been really
Absolutely.
instrumental in helping.
I would not have gotten it done.
So Bob, this is Dave. One of the important things you told us earlier that I think could be emphasized at this point is the specifics in terms of how we move forward. We, in all practical purposes, we really need to wait for that August 2023 approval before we can do, I think, much more significantly to the project.
Yes, my thought is obviously between now and August, we're going to be an OSHPD HCI plan review, you know, because we're going for our first back check, which is supposed to submit sometime in December. That will be, is expected to be 4 months in plan review, within a month for corrections, and then a 3-month second back check, and then a few more weeks for last corrections, with hopefully HCI approving our drawings in about September of 23. So obviously we're going to be in a substantial period of holding, and we don't need to make decisions, you know, are we moving forward? You know, do we have funding, et cetera? I think what needs to happen is we need to wait till, you know, plans get approved. And we will actually know before the plans are approved if we get funded by FEMA. You know, obviously, if we get funded by FEMA, which is a long shot, I'm not going to be optimistic about it. It's a long shot. But if we get funded by FEMA, we're basically home free, because we have to come up with 30%, and it's a little under $10 million. Now, granted, we have to pay all invoices, and then we submit our invoices for reimbursement, but
we
it
can
goes
do
at a
that.
steady pace. We can do that. We have the funds. So, you know, I'm trying to be very, very cautiously optimistic that we get that money, because that then takes all the pressure off. Well, it takes all the pressure off of Dave, and it takes all the pressure off of all of us that this is a funded project.
Sounds better.
Yeah, and you know, but if not, if it turns out that when they announce the announcements and we're not funded, that would be in August. We're talking about sending the plans out for bid in September. Obviously, right about that time, we're going to have to sit down and have a very, very hard discussion, because do we want to start a project that we do not, as I say, we don't get FEMA, that we do not have all the funds for? You know, do we want to start a project and then run out of funds? You know, but Dave also has, you know, his presentation, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, but he's been working very hard on this about funding it without FEMA. So
That's kind of a plan B and C.
yes, right. So yeah, our plan A is that we get FEMA, but that's a slim margin. And then plan B would be, Dave's plan that he's going to present to you. And so, we'll see. I mean, after the supervisors meeting, I was called by the Bakersfield Californian, and Tim approved me giving them some data because they were at the meeting and heard about the project. And so I answered their questions, and, and they weren't aware that, all hospitals have got to do this, and all the hospitals in Bakersfield are non-compliant, and all of them are struggling with how to fund this. It's an unfunded mandate from the state. And so you will probably see an article come out in the Californian about our project specifically.
Hopefully that carries some clout with FEMA, that it's being endorsed by on a county level.
Yes, well, yeah, it's actually required that they have to, only because we do not have this massive study for emergency preparedness that each county does. So entities like us have to go in. The county actually is what's called the sub-applicant, and we are the people backing the sub-applicant. We do all the work. Okay. The county just does the thing because we are falling under their hazard mitigation plan, it's called.
Okay. I wasn't aware that Kern Medical's applied under this.
I don't know.
Don't think I heard that from the county folks at all. So
who'd you hear it from?
I haven't.
Oh.
I'm surprised.
That they didn't try.
Yeah, right.
Well, the challenge is that they could. Yeah. But they haven't done much planning.
Right.
And without having done some planning, it's a little hard to apply. Right. Because you got to have some specific. You have to have a huge amount of very specific information. Yeah. But also, it also is a two-edged sword, because they also say that FEMA sometimes doesn't like what they call shovel-ready plans. And we are considered shovel-ready because we are going to start very shortly after the award. A lot of plans are, we're submitting for money to do our studies, and then we're submitting for monies to do the work after we do the studies, kind of a thing. Right. And a lot of those projects get approved.
I wonder why that is. Do you think that they would, they give you the money, like they would want to start being spent immediately? You know what I mean?
Right.
It just seems
Bob,
I don't understand their logic.
if we could get McCarthy's rep to come to our meeting, get them started on helping us, they can help.
Yeah.
And they will help.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can go down that road.
Well, we need to get them and talk to them, get them involved. We don't want to wait till July. Say,
Oh, no,
absolutely.
But we need to, Cal OES is already behind us on this. But when it goes to FEMA would be when
that's what
we would want to have
and he
Kevin.
might have some influence.
Yeah, he's
Speaker of the House.
like the renewed Speaker of the House. Yes. Hopefully.
Okay, Ross, are you taking over the meeting now?
Ross,
Question.
Ross, I'm sorry. I started the meeting to get it going until you got here, so I'll hand the authority over to you, sir.
John, really glad you did that. Thank you so much. I apologize for being late.
Ross, I wanted to ask you a question and I couldn't ask help. Could you please stop dropping off those mail-in ballots so we can get certified?
I wondered what was delaying it. Okay, so Bob, please continue. Are we on to the SPC 4D?
Yes. So covered where we're at on the master plan and the FEMA application. And so on the 4D testing, on the job walk, 2 of the 3 companies that I believe are going to bid, I approached 10 companies, but a lot of them said doesn't fit what we do. But I approached, I left it on my desk, but I have a long list of companies that I called. But it really boils down to there are 2 companies in Bakersfield that do this kind of work. And there's 1 company that has an office out of Ridgecrest that does this kind of work. And so it appears that we will have 3 bids, very probably, and the bids are due this coming Monday at 2 o'clock. So that will be the cost to do all the samples and put everything back where they got to cut holes in the walls for the cement block and pull out rebar samples. And then they have to repair the rebar, put new cement block back into the wall and do all the repairs. So that cost will be at our next meeting or the board meeting, whichever we decide.
Thanks, Bob. Questions, anybody? Okay, then the new admin building.
Okay, so the architect completed all the corrections requested by the county and resubmitted about 2.5 weeks ago. As of this morning, we still have no responses back from the county plan reviewers. But obviously it's there. According to the architect, everything they asked for has been put on the drawings. So it's just kind of waiting on them now.
Building looks really good.
Yeah, other than the backside, we still got to work on the backside. But yes, the front, the building, the sides looks much better.
What would you do, sandblast that and start over, or?
We are going to start by pressure washing. With we got a large pressure washer that we're going to pressure wash that whole backside of the building.
You think you'll get that paint off?
Oh, it'll take, well, it's not only paint, it is actually a colored stucco coat that was applied at a later date. Obviously, you can see the building used to be sort of yellow.
Yeah.
And then they re-stucco coated. Well, that has failed. And so a lot of that is coming loose. So we have to try and get all of that off.
It's facing straight south.
Right in the sun.
It's a bitch.
Yes, yeah. So we'll be working on that fairly soon. I only have one project guy these days. And when he completes one of our other projects of the hot water heater, we'll be back down there working on that.
Thanks, Bob.
Looks good so far.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, emergency generator.
Okay, so as we voted on last time, was to redraw the plans showing a reduced scope of work at this time. That is in process with the architect and the engineers. I don't have an arrival date of the drawings, but I'm hoping, inside of the next 4 weeks. I did have a conversation with our HCI Oshpod area compliance officer, and he agreed with me that if we decide to go with a reduced scope, we'll submit it to him as what's called an ACD of reduced scope. So we don't have to go through the whole plan review process again, because we're just reducing scope if we choose to go that route. Once I have the drawings, obviously we'll place it back out to public bid. And like I said, I'll go with both plan houses to try and broaden the scope. And of course, we'll also be calling all of the large contractors in Bakersfield to hopefully see if we can get them bid this time instead of ending up with just one. So, but we have a few weeks here while we're waiting for a set of plans. We're not going to wait for approval of those plans with HCI. Simply when the plans are done, the contractors will be bidding 2 sets of plans, the approved drawings and the reduced scope drawings. If we choose to go with the reduced scope, then we will submit those to HCI as what's called an ACD, an alternate means of compliance for a reduced scope. So that's where that project is at.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed that the contractors in Bakersfield are twiddling their thumbs and waiting for work to come in.
Well, it's a better possibility because, usually when we were bid out the bid last time, that was during the height of when all the school work hits.
Yeah.
For all the school districts.
Yeah. Questions, comments for Bob? All right, then the emergency generator number 1 failure.
Yeah, that is being rolled in with the emergency generator project. HCI didn't like it hanging out there under an emergency authority to proceed as a standalone project. So the architect is just working on a few little documents to roll that into the other project, just showing that portion of the scope of the work has already been done, and it'll be rolled into the same permit number as the emergency generator project. But there's no cost to that. It's just a matter of some paperwork.
All right. And we're not done with train yet?
We are done with train.
What? No.
I threw a rather large fit and threatened to go really high up if they didn't get the job done. And they showed up, got the work done. We passed the inspection, and
hallelujah.
yeah, finally.
Heidi, go get a bottle of champagne.
I also had a discussion with the area compliance officer this morning regarding that project. The person who has to sign off on that final test is the fire marshal. He was back today from his vacation. And so Bruce was going to approach Lauren. And because he says the one of us have to drive up and witness the test, you need to get trained back to redo the test for us. And I said, well, I'll let you hear it from Lauren, the fire marshal's mouth. But he told me that if the inspector of record witnessed the test, that he would accept that and would pass it without having to come out to do one last retest.
Great.
So I'm waiting for Bruce to be in touch with Lauren, which, you know, they work together. They both work for HCI. One's just the area compliance officer and one's the fire marshal. So if they both agree, then they will submit the project for closure.
Wow, that's great. Good progress, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, the dietary water heater, number 2.
That is going very well. All piping is done, pressure tested. We got 90% of the insulation on. I ended up short 4 pieces, so I ordered those and they're on their way. We have run the gas line. We have to just put in the support structure on the gas line. We have to put the support structure on the flue and makeup air pipes, which we'll be working on later this week. I then have to have a chlorination company up and super chlorinate the new tank and water lines. And then have the lock and bar representative come in and do the startup on it, and we'll be completing it. So we're getting pretty close. I hope to have it operating by end of December.
All right. So back to the train for just a sec. Heidi, are you listening? Are you here?
Yep, she's here.
So could you take that off the agenda for next month if in fact we pass the inspection and we're done with it?
Got it.
Thanks. Okay. The pharmacy HVAC.
All right, so that project, as you know, is done. There is one test on the HCI, what's called the TIO, the testing and inspections form, that needs to be completed. And that it's a study that has to be done by the electrical engineer. He has promised me he will get it done. What it is it's showing proof that each level of breakers in the hospital, the breaker that feeds the actual air conditioner will trip before the breaker that feeds that whole portion of the hospital, which will trip before it trips the main breaker of the hospital. So it's a design study that just shows that each of these breakers are appropriately sized. And so I'm going to push him to try and get that done. That is the only thing left, and then that project will be ready for closure.
Okay. Do we know that they're appropriately sized?
Oh, yes. The challenge is he has to show it on paper. And normally if you had GE breakers, you would go to GE and you would get the specifications on that breaker that tells you all the criteria of how quick it trips and this and that and all this technical data that's way above my head. The challenge is our old hospital has panels and breakers from a company called Zensco, who has been out of business for 30 years.
Bad company.
But boy, they made a lot of breakers and a lot of hospitals have them. I have been dealing with all my working life of Zensco breakers. You have to buy them used. There are literally warehouses. There's a warehouse in Bakersfield that has just shelves full of Zensco breakers. And if I need one, I go there and I buy a used one because nothing else bolts in.
It's an automatic cancellation on your home if you got them.
Yeah.
Insurance.
From insurance.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and those are all going to be gone with the master project. Every last Zensco panel, except I think one, will be replaced with either, Color Hammer, GE, or one of the current manufacturers of breakers and panels, because all of our new electric panels have to be seismically compliant. And of course, you can't do that on an old Zensco panel. So those will luckily all go away as part of the master project. So, but it's a challenge.
Bob, could you just send colored current through there and take a picture of it, and that would show the whole thing?
I have provided lots of information to the engineer. It's just a matter, he needs to sit down and do the study. The problem is he has to use suppositions based on similar breakers from similar manufacturers. You know, and engineers are like to be very, very specific. And so that's kind of stretching it for him.
Specs, yeah.
But, you know, we'll get there.
All right. And then the last item, the pharmacy curbside pickup.
And that's only on there because we're just waiting for Tim to say that, yes, they've implemented it or because everything is done.
They're doing it soft rollout of it now. They have been doing it for a couple weeks now.
Okay.
And apparently I guess it's going okay. So I've got a meeting with Suda tomorrow to kind of get an update on that, just to where she's at.
Okay.
So,
So it sounds like it's in soft start and being done.
yeah, it's some new staff that came on that they're training to do that. So they want to make sure that they're up to speed before we put that into play. We don't want any problems. We want it to go smoothly from the first time.
Yeah. And she is getting a major upgrade of her computer systems here in the next few weeks, as I understand it, Carrie.
Process, yeah.
Part of this is a stretch, but very soon.
Yeah. Yeah, Carrie and I have been down there. We've been looking at how we got to mattify their work counters because they got to go to a dual screen setup for every workstation and there's physically not enough space. So we were doing some redos of things there to implement that. So that's been kind of slowing down her other processes as well.
Okay, any questions before we move on?
Just a quick question, Bob.
Yes.
Because, you know, Fred and I are on the policy and personnel meeting, and I was just gonna ask, how's the huge gigantic packet you have to do for the policies for the construction? Is that moving along pretty good so far?
We don't have a policy and procedure manual for construction.
Okay.
But we do have, we turned in the one for emergency preparedness, which which you guys were reviewing. We are partway, plant operations policy and procedure.
That's
the one you're referring to.
That's the one.
And that is on my desk. Now that I'm caught up with FEMA, it's literally sitting right there on my desk and Emily and I will be working on that one. She, in the meantime, in between working on FEMA, she's been working on the policy and procedure manual for safety.
Okay.
And so you'll be getting probably both of those fairly soon.
Okay.
Yeah. And that will then have us current on our policies and procedures because some of them go back to pre-computers. They were done on typewriter.
Yeah. Well, I know yesterday we were looking at some from 1997 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was in his book, but yeah.
No, but I mean,
But I had some similar ones. Yes. I think 4 managers ago, his wife worked in the department and she typed them. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Well, I know we got some time before
Yes.
find out.
So that, now that hopefully we can breathe a sigh of relief here in a few days on FEMA, then we can get back to those.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Mhm.
Okay, then we'll move on. There aren't any invoices for review, so we'll go to to Dave and the master project cash flow presentation.
Thanks, Ross. I'm gonna do the share here and let's see. So we're on, I think, page 6, and we're doing this because we now that we have a new number in terms of the estimate of the master improvement project, as you know, it was 19,600,000, and now it's the new numbers that was sent to me by Bob that he has a lot of good detail is 34,191,000. So
Hey, was that I thought there was some additional stuff that wasn't counted yet.
the only thing not in my number was the
You had, it was 34 plus.
Well,
yeah,
we're at around 34.5 when you know, roughly give or take. But again, Leland Saylor is redoing their cost estimate due to the Cal OES people went through that Leland Saylor thing with a fine tooth comb and we're making some adjustments. So I don't have a final cost.
So this is close.
This is close.
it's pretty close. The latest number you had without the Bob, you told me this morning, the latest number you had without the generators was 32 million something.
No, it's Emily, it was 34.5, wasn't it?
It was 32.2.
Okay. I'm terrible with numbers.
Yeah, that's,
32
so I remembered that number because that makes my 34-1 pretty close because that's about a 2 million add on to that.
Right, so with the generator, we're at around between 34 and 35. But obviously the generator is a separate project and is not being submitted to FEMA.
Okay, plus 8% a year, it's been going up. Did you figure that in, Dave?
It is in Leland Sailor's quote.
Yeah.
It is- yes.
They've already factored all that in. Yeah, that's correct.
Escalations are all built in.
Well, I have this 4-page summary. Obviously, the board needs to know from the CFO, how are we going to pay for this? And that's what I told you I would do, is put together a best case plan on what events need to occur for us to have a completed project and an adequate amount at the end of a safe level of operating reserves remaining. So my primary objective, and you guys we can discuss this and tweak it if you'd like, but just coming from the way I think, I called it completion of the master improvement project while maintaining a safe level of operating reserves. Because in my mind, we have to have both. We have to have, a partially completed project doesn't do anybody any good. And completing the project and having no money at all left in the bank isn't really a very pretty picture either. So we really need to accomplish both of those in this plan. Is that an okay starting point?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. So the way it turned out, I ended up with a step 1, 2, and 3. So I can summarize this and I can say getting this accomplished is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So anyway, step 1 is one that we spent a lot of time talking about today, that if we qualify for the FEMA grant, we really are pretty much, it's not going to be an issue at all, because only 9.5 million of the 25 million that we currently have would be needed of internal funds. And that would also, one of the other main advantages is we would not have to go out for additional debt financing, which you'll see later on. This particular plan requires an extra 10 million of long-term debt. Step 2 is a listing of 5 different goals that every one of these have, in order to hit the numbers that I have in my cash flow and my ending balances. Each one of these we have to hit our targets on each one of these goals. So the first one is, and again, I'm looking for low-hanging fruit of things that we've already discussed that we think is doable. And we know historically we've done much better than we're currently doing on our census for skilled nursing. And we want to get that back up. Actually, I ended up stopping in 2027 in my analysis, and I got to 61 average census by 2027. So hopefully you will agree that that's a doable goal, that as we grow the census back by about 5 to 7% a year, that's something we can accomplish.
Dave, what's the industry doing? Are they decreasing skilled nursing beds nationwide or even California-wide? What's the trend that COVID sort of was right in the middle of it, but now we should be starting to see some trends.
Yeah.
Tim, that might be a question.
Yeah, what we're hearing obviously is the population continues to age. The thought is that you'll still see more SNF beds being needed. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the things we're working with current health.
So that could be a good thing then.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, sorry, Dave.
That's fine. And then what you'll see when I show you the numbers, that's about a 500,000 to 700,000 a year improvement in money coming in. Now, granted, there's a couple $100,000 in it costs, but one way you could put it is for every census of 1, it would be let's say 120,000. So to go up by 10 to go from where we're at right now, 46 to 56, so you're talking about $1 million. So that's obviously going to make a huge difference in having funds available to pay for the new project. Restoring and growing the GI program, most of my estimates, I didn't have to go anything more than what we've already got in the current budget with getting that GI program back. So I didn't put any additional, it wasn't necessary for me to do any more than just getting the program up and running similar to what we had previously. So I was pleased that I was prepared to do more, but the numbers came out such that I didn't have to do more than except to show that the numbers of what we got budgeted for this year on the GI program. I also included in the growth category the overall situation where what we get paid by third-party payers, Blue Cross, Medicare, Medi-Cal, all the different contracts we have, very much plays a role in how much money is coming into the organization. And so we have a consultant that does that for us, and he's an expert, Andy, working, and he's done a good job over the years to get us the one basic thing that has to be done that's not necessarily an automatic is we got to make sure that we don't allow contracts to expire because we're going to continue to get paid the old rates. And we need to continue to get all those contracts renewed so that we update the rates with a higher inflation amount compared to the prior years. So that kind of management of third-party contracting is one key aspect of growth that needs to be highlighted, as it just doesn't happen on its own, is my point. So AR collections is a similar type of goal that affects growth, keeping the denial rates down and working the daily accounts, making sure that there's not any timeliness issues of getting bills sent out to the third-party payers that result in denials, to work with all the different groups. What ends up happening is insurance companies hire people that they spend their whole time trying to figure out how they can deny claims to hospitals. And so we got to be one step ahead of those folks because they're looking for any weaknesses in our billing systems that they can come back and say, you didn't submit all the required documentation, so we're not going to pay you. So it's an ongoing challenge for us. It's another one of those that doesn't happen automatically. I'm assuming we're going to stay at or below industry averages. You want that number to be lower as far as denials at 1.5% of charges. And we want to continue to upgrade any best practices out there in the industry that we can take advantage of to make sure we're staying consistent with modern ways to collect money and making sure that our billers are trained appropriately. The third one, IGTs is a big part of the amount coming in to the organization. We want to get back to the levels we were a couple of years ago, which is projected in the 23 numbers. And then going forward from there, we want to maintain those levels of IGT funding or better. We also want to seek out new opportunities like the ERC program as an example, and working with the managed care reps when there's new programs that are put out for incentives for hospitals to take advantage of new programs. So that is a very important, this goal number 3, I'd have to say is probably where my numbers are, what I would call the softest in my projections, because I'm going to know a lot more at the end of this fiscal year, how we're doing, whether in fact we're bringing in some of that new money that we expect from the Tehachapi situation and those kind of things. I'm going to know a lot more. The good news with all these goals is in terms of a decision that the board has to make, it seems to be unfolding a time frame because we've got the August of 23 approval date for FEMA, that really we've got from now until then to learn even more about whether these numbers are doable, such that when the board has to make a decision, assuming we don't get the FEMA money, we'll have a better handle on some of these things like IGTs in terms of the doability of hitting our targets and being able to afford going forward without the FEMA money. So the timing of us and having maybe a harder prediction, more confident prediction of IGT will work out well for us, because right now I'm not at the point where I have as much confidence as I'd like to have to be able to say categorically, yes, we can afford to move forward with this master project and shouldn't be any problem in funding it even without the FEMA money. I'll know more after we see some more experience with the IGTs. The next goal, cost containment, is a given in any organization, hospital especially. We have the problems with what third-party payers are willing to increase in payments compared to what normal inflation is on cost. Generally, you see anywhere from 1 to 3% on what the payers pay you, but sometimes 3 to 5% or even higher on normal inflationary costs. So we have to manage that gap. As every year goes on, we get paid less as a percentage increase, but our costs have the tendency to go up higher as a percentage increase unless we're doing an aggressive job in managing those costs. What I did put in the model is a 3.5% increase average per year in labor, assuming there'll be some pockets where we'll have to compete with other hospitals to get staff, that our current 2.5% might not be adequate in some areas and have to do market adjustments, 3% inflation on all the other areas. I also, in order to deal with the growth issues of skilled nursing, I added 1.5% per year of additional staffing in my model. Another important aspect as we are working on this master project between now and the end of 2027, that our capital spending of existing projects are kept to a minimum. And I put the number in at 300,000 a year. So it's not like we can have our cake and eat it too, that we can spend a lot on the construction and that plus do big high ticket equipment purchases. We just can't do both at the same time. So we'll have to be very careful on how much we approve in capital spending over the next few years. And similarly with miscellaneous construction projects that come up in this particular committee, the Building and Grounds Committee, we come up with new things that we like to move forward on. We have to be careful to keep those to a minimum as well. I think I have 150 to 100,000 a year on that. So
Dave,
I don't have.
Dave, did you figure the Leo building?
Yes, I got 500,000 in there for that. So I assume we would be purchasing that new building across the street.
Cool. Good, thank you.
Okay. The fifth goal is something that just came up, as interest rates have really changed dramatically, even in safe investments that hospitals are allowed to make, like securities and treasuries. So I'm in the process of working with Gary Hicks and other banking institutions in creating a new laddered diversified mix of allowable investments, thereby increasing the rate of return of how our monies are currently invested. We typically average something a little less than 1% with the way rates were historically for many years. That number has changed dramatically to where we could expect anywhere from 3 to 4.5%, depending on how we go out and make the investments. So that will add money that will be available for the project, anywhere from 3 to 500,000 a year potential, depending on how long we hold on to that money before it's spent on the project. So the last goal or step, you could call step number 3, because the first 5 goals doesn't quite get us there unless we go out and borrow an extra $10 million on a revenue bond. We can view this particular step as a contingency. For example, the amount we borrow, let's say, could be a little bit less than 10 million if we realize that our IGD funds are coming in higher than we expected. Maybe it'll be 4 million or maybe 6 million, or but based on what I have right now on the IGTs, we would need another 10 million in financing. Now, I recently changed that. It used to be a fiscal 24 bond issue, but to buy us some time so we don't have to make debt payments in those 2 years of 24 and 25, I pushed it out 2 more years, that we don't really need the 10 million until fiscal 26. And then by definition, because we don't have that debt out there those 2 years, we save about $1 million in cash because the debt service won't start kicking in until 26.
Dave, if that's the case, where we're at right there, we're not going to be able to service the debt. Nobody's going to give us the money. We'll be like the Hatchby was.
I wouldn't have put this in unless I did thorough analysis of where our debt capacity is. Because we've been doing so well financially, we do qualify for more debt, and I've had that confirmed by Gary Hicks. So thankfully, our bottom line improvements over the last couple of years and our high cash position really puts us in a pretty good position if we have to go out for new debt. I don't really like the debt financing as an option, because it's really making things a lot more difficult beyond 2027, where you now have an extra 600,000 or 700,000 a year in debt service that comes right off the top of what monies that you have to make available for normal operations. So the potential for a negative cash flow once the new building is built is higher if you have a lot of debt, obviously.
Dave, what I'm hearing you say so far is we're sort of on hold until July or August of next year.
Yeah, so this presentation has less meaning in terms of
Right.
anybody having to react to what I'm saying today. But it certainly is, it's a starting point for us to get a general feel for how much flexibility we have and where we're at in terms of the types of performance that has to occur
dial the operator.
for us to
dial
stay.
the operator.
So in general, every organization needs to have a model like this where we do some projections going forward so that we can get a feel for the strategic plan financially on hitting all our goals of having enough money and still accomplishing the quality initiatives that are necessary to look at. I'm going to move this back over to the other side again. And the next 2 pages are summaries, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and statistics of what I wanted to show. Like I usually do, I like to show history, where we're currently at, and the future. So what made it easier to stop in 27 is Bob gave me a detailed construction plan that showed how much per year would have to come out of our bank accounts to pay for each phase. And I used those exact numbers to know exactly how the flow of cash would be. And I incorporated that into the normal operations to see what would be the result at the end of each year. But just starting with the income statement, which is lines 1 through 17, you can see historically our bottom lines 3.1 million to 2 million 4, and then last year, this is now the audited fiscal 22, ended up being about 70,000 higher than what we showed in June. 4,446,000. This is our current picture after October, so 4 months, we're at 505. Not to be concerned, because you can see my number at year end for this current year is even better than last year, mostly due to this line item 13. And again, keep in mind what I've done here is best case. So one of the best case assumptions I made is, yes, in fact, we will get that 2.8 million ERC money in, and that's part of this 4,999,999 is that 2.8 million of employee retention credit cash is expected to come in early next calendar year. So that's part of the best case scenario. I did factor in some additional lump sum bonuses for the employees. You'll see that later. So I tried to be realistic in exactly what my crystal ball looks like in terms of some of that type of detail. But you can see a very rosy bottom line in fiscal 23. Then these numbers start gradually declining based on the normal problems of having the payers pay us a less of an increase versus what the inflation costs are on salaries and benefits and professional fees and those kind of things. You see an erosion of our bottom line based on, unless I know that we're going to have some big growth initiatives outside of what we already talked about with the skilled nursing.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
The years you picked for this report, where'd they come from? Is that, so it looks like you got 6 or 7 years there. Is that normal?
Again, the reason I stopped at fiscal 27 was that's where Bob stopped when he gave me a picture that we would have the building completed by.
I was more concerned about where you started. You started at COVID, where we're getting major income. If you would have gone back to 19, 18, 17, way down to nothing.
Yeah, I could have really opened up your eyes when 2015, 2016, where we were in the red, and then we could really feel good about these years right here. I mostly just ran out of room. There's only so many columns I can put on a page. But yeah, it would certainly have a different picture if I went back to those years where we were really struggling.
It doesn't make much difference right now. We're in a holding pattern until July or August. So
the other thing I've showed in the past, how we can feel good about how our cash all sources number went up dramatically. This number, I think, was 10 million in 2018, went from 10 to 29 million in 3 years. Came back down last year. We finished at 25. Our current amount, because we haven't had an IGT in like 6 months, is down to 22, but that isn't stopping me from projecting a number even higher than where we finished last year. That if all these IGTs come in, and the ERC program comes in, we're looking at an improvement of 1.3 million of cash. And again, the other thing that makes that easier to hit that number is we're not going to do a whole lot this current year on the master project because we're waiting until next August to really do anything significant. So that's not cash. There's not any cash getting used for that category. But so my point to you is, when you see these numbers, keep in mind this is best case. If everything that what we're assuming comes to fruition, that these are our balances at the end of each of the years. You can see as we start spending money on the master project, the balances go down from 26 to 16 to 11, then levels off, and then there's one last push there for the last phase, and down to a number that is considered, in my mind, as to be an acceptable level of reserves because the project will be completed. What we use for a benchmark of that is 60 days of cash on hand, as what the literature tells us is a safe level of reserves. It's obviously a subjective type of statement, what's considered safe. lot of conservative CFOs would like to see something closer to 100 days. I'm one of those that would really, it's really an added luxury when you're up to, let's say, 100 days of cash, because the mindset of the organization is you can do more when opportunities come up, and you don't have to try to scrimp. You can sometimes take advantage of certain investments if you have a higher amount of reserves, because you're not having to worry about any unexpected bad thing to happen that will blow away the remaining balances, and then all of a sudden you have to worry about making payroll. So those are examples on how you would think about what's a safe level of reserves. On the liabilities side, check my notes here. I'm trying to go fairly fast, but I have a lot of information to cover, and so I hope you guys can bear with me. An example of showing you what's happening to the balance sheet. This is net property, plant, and equipment, line 21. How this number moves once the master project is completed, from 8 million up to 34 million. Now, the reason why it's not a complete 34 million increase is you have depreciation adding in every year to kind of take away from the net property, plant, and equipment. So, but you can see there's a significant growth in our fixed assets, more than almost 5 times, a little more than 4 times the amount we currently have in fixed assets, because we'll have a new building. Similarly, we look at a line item here. What I was pleased to see, what I wasn't expecting. Oh, by the way, on all this going up to line 17 on net income, one of the reasons that it's important is to know that going through all these years, we have to hit debt bank covenants. And I know Chet used to talk about that, otherwise, if you don't hit the covenants, the bank comes in and they do special studies, and they look at, sometimes making changes in administration and all kinds of important things like that. Thankfully, we don't have as many covenants as we used to, but we still have one called debt service coverage ratio. Total income available for debt service needs to be a 7-figure number every year for us to stay in compliance, so that we have we're more than 1.25 in debt service coverage ratio. The other covenant that's still there is cash liquidity, and that needs to be more than 30 days. You'll see later on in my last page that we meet both of those in all these years. So one of the goals of putting together a analysis is like this is to also make sure you're hitting your covenants. Long-term liabilities is one of those areas that has been a conservative place that Chet put a lot of the excess money that we weren't sure we had to pay back. I was concerned that I'd have to bring these numbers significantly down, and you can see here I had to bring them down a little bit, down to 7.8 million, but not significantly, not down to 2 or 3 million, where we can still show have some room there, that if we have a bad settlement, that it's already shows up on our balance sheet. We don't have to post that to the bottom line. This is a summary of the cash flow, and what you'll see on this page, I'm taking the liberty to actually go into a little bit more detail so I can show you the higher level of detail on cash flow on the next couple pages. But on the summary, you can see all the categories for receipts on lines 33 through 41. Included on that is this hot pink shaded area in fiscal 26 that we're going to need an extra $10 million of new borrowing. And that's the patient collections. You're going to see more detail on the next page. We have to hit each one of those numbers or a combination of those numbers in order to make sure that we continue to grow on how much is coming into the organization in terms of our collections, our payer rates, and those kind of things are important. Included in that is the growth assumptions as well. The IGT information, you can see our big goose eggs so far for the first 4 months of this year. No IGT money has come in. That's expected to be at least 8.2 million, probably should be higher than that. But that was a conservative picture. Going forward, close to $9 million a year, and that's net. So why that number's
Dave, do
different.
you have what
Go
you're
ahead.
saying you're expecting to come in? Have you calculated that in your figures, although it's not here yet? It's what's expected?
Yes, and that's why I say these numbers are soft, because I could miss it by $1 million, and I don't know. I'm basing it on what I currently know. Sometimes the state makes decisions to delay a payment by 6 months or a year. Then all of a sudden you have to push these numbers out.
Thanks, Dave. Good job.
But I wanted to emphasize that so that you're not surprised if I come back 6 months or a year from now and I show a lower number. I can tell you that I told you I wasn't sure. It's just a soft estimate. The other ones I've done the normal inflation of 3% on grants and tax proceeds and donations. Interest income is off a detail, and I'll show you that a little bit later. You can see how if I accomplish that goal 5 in redoing the investments, how our interest income adds a lot more to the cash position, especially in the years where we have high balances. The overall debt service obviously goes up significantly once we do new borrowing, an extra $600,000 a year, and that's assuming a 30-year borrowing at 5%. Now, 5% is not an optimistic number, but it's a number based on current trends of interest rates being higher. And so I decided not to be optimistic on that in best case. Our current rates, for example, that we just got a little less than 2 years ago is 2.75 is what we're paying on our current debt. So there's a little room there for improvement because I put 5% cost of financing if we on that extra $10 million. So the key number is line 54. This number had to be 60 or higher. Otherwise, I was going to start over and look for other improvements that are necessary. But we were going to finish the project and still had a safe level of reserves. We can see on line 53, the ending balance of $6,770,000, based on all the ins and outs of all the assumptions made on capital spending. 300,000, no more than 300,000. We can't spend that much on miscellaneous. This includes construction, 250 of capital, 50 on construction. So we end up having this resulting number after all the assumptions are plugged into the model. And I talked about earlier that we had to meet covenants. This number on line 57 has to be higher than 58. And in fact, it is higher. We're starting to get close here in 27. So if we start eroding our bottom line much more than this beyond 27, and you'd like to think with a new building that more people will come and use it, and they'll feel better in the community about using us, and we'll even get our volumes will go up significantly, that we get our bottom line back up again. But at least we'd have a new building completed and our debt service and meeting our covenants all the way up through 2027. Similarly, days of cash on hand, we easily make that. That was Chet did a great job negotiating that number down to 30 days is all we have to have. So we'd have other problems other than not hitting debt covenants if our days were below 30. But you see in this case, we're significantly higher in all these years, meeting both of those requirements. Now I'm taking the liberty of adding a couple pages that is not in your packet that will be in the full board packet. And all it is more detail of what I just showed you on the cash flow. The reason for that is I wanted to emphasize some of this detail that, okay, we got to average 5% a year on Medicare. Now, granted, one of the reasons that number is higher is its cost-based formulas from prior years come into play, which should allow us to get a higher bump because our costs have gone up more than normal. So I'm making the assumption that Medicare over these years will average 5% per year. I tried to pick what I'm familiar with of what's doable in terms of rate negotiations, and Andy could confirm or deny this. I think he'd be pretty comfortable with these 1 to 3% per year on all the insurances, the HMOs. And the only other area that's more than that is the retail pharmacy, 5% per year improvement there. This number right here in the hot pink, I have detail to support this growth number, the 557 and the 576, those numbers. If you go down to this growth table I have here on the page, I'm showing what our census was on the skilled back in 2020. It was 55, went down to 49. Last year it finished at 46. We're currently at 46. We're going to finish the year at 49 and then gradually go up about 3 a year, 55, 58, and then 61. That's the growth that has to be in the model for us to have enough cash to make it all work. But we definitely need that. These numbers up here translate into these percentages: 6%, 5.7%, 5.4%, and 5.1% improvements in our census for those. And you can see the calculations on how you how we know what our payments per day is, and then what our amounts are because there's more days, how much extra that adds in cash. So I wanted you to see some of this extra detail to get a level of appreciation that the summary information has a lot built into each one of those numbers. The other thing I wanted to show you is this whole section on how we've had these categories of our investments. This grand total equals what you see on the balance sheet as total cash, and it's been divided into these areas. So basically what I told Barbara is if we're going to have most of this money invested, I will make sure that we have a minimum of 5 million sitting at her that she can be available for normal operations. So to be safe, I stuck 5 million, even though I think we could probably do better than that, have some of that money available to earn interest. But just to be safe, I put the 5 million out there as normal general checking and savings working capital.
Would we have a line of credit with West America like we used to, where you could use more of that money to invest?
Yeah, it's a good point. I've in fact, this week I'm getting that renewed. I'm thinking of even seeing if I can get it more. Right now it's at $3 million. We could do as much, maybe qualify to get maybe a 5 million, because now's the time to get increases in things like lines of credit. When they think you're doing so well is when they want to give you money.
Right.
So I might try to bump that up even higher, even though I don't have any plans on using it. Every time I use it, we have to pay interest, and we don't really need to use it unless at this stage.
That way you can invest more money.
Exactly, a good point. Especially if we start seeing returns a lot higher than what they're going to charge us on the line of credit. So I did my research. We're only getting 1.3% on LAIF, and I say use the word only. That actually was a number favorable to any other options that we had. Now, because of what's going on with treasuries and other marketable securities that we qualify to invest, we could probably do something closer to 3.5. So I intentionally lowered our LAIF investments, and this is all subject to board approval, but I just did it for purposes of analysis to try to maximize interest income. And I said, okay, Barbara gets 5 million. We put $1 million in LAIF because I do want to keep something in LAIF. And the rest of it all goes to some kind of laddered investment portfolio, earning 3.5%, 4%. So we have less buckets out there. This project fund, we gradually, just based on spending money on the project, we use it up. So in fact, we made a recent withdrawal of 900,000 last week, and that represented monies that had been spent over the last 12 months from this fund that was taken out when we did the most recent financing in 2021. And now that number is going to be brought to zero as soon as we spend it all from monies from the project fund. But my point is, we're using these two new lines to start earning more interest than we've had in the past in terms of a reorganization of investments. So I wanted to get you at least introduced to this concept. We'll have to have more meetings to discuss and more details before you get comfortable with it. I'm obviously not going to do anything without board approval. And I have brought in other people other than myself that are more qualified to give us advice on what's safe types of reserves that are allowable for district hospitals, like Gary Hicks and other folks. So where do I want to wrap up? I wanted to also show you IGTs. Just to give you an example, there's been a lot more auditing going on this last line item, 21E prime. We're pretty confident we're going to get the full 1.5 million this year. Going out future years, whether or not we can sustain, I'll know more probably by the August date, whether this 1.5 is still doable in subsequent years, or whether because of this stringency of the new audits that it's going to be harder for us to prove that we hit our metrics and get the full amount that's in the budget. So that's an example where the IGTs could be overstated. Some of these line items could also be understated that I'm hoping to find out. It'd be nice to get something closer to what we got in 2021. You can see that number of 13 million. So none of these numbers are at that level.
Dave, if we want to look bad, why don't we just keep Tim as CEO?
Good point. So this is more detail on interest income that I could have talked about when I was talking about interest income. I also wanted to show you kind of an interesting thing that happened. So Chet a lot of times would use the excuse, we don't know if we have to pay it back, so we're not going to show it as net patient revenue. So we have a year where he could have showed, based on formulas, the SB stands for should be, based on how much actually came in compared to what we showed on the bottom line. There was about a $6 million difference to the bottom line. My point in showing this is I wanted to keep these numbers reasonable and not play games with net patient revenue. I wanted to actually reflect what we're bringing in on IGTs and on patient collections. So that was the whole reason I did this, is I basically want to show you that we're not playing games anymore. This here is part of the prior year coming back to the bottom line. What we were able to do last year, 2.3 million, was taking some of that 5.5 million back to the bottom line. So I'm giving you guys a lot more than just a construction presentation today. I'm trying to cover the whole waterfront of how our financials all blend together and how it all shows a kind of a story and a history of how we can get to where we've been, where we currently are at, and how we can finish this project and have and meet the goals of having everything in place, and specifically what are the the steps necessary. If we, as long as we hit those targets, we should be in good shape. So I've come to the conclusion that at this stage, I don't have any reasons not to continue to encourage us to move forward, especially because we're doing it on a phase-by-phase basis. And we have opportunities down the road if things change to pull the plug if we had to. But right now, everything looks like there's a lot of different paths that we can get to finish this project and have what we want and still have a robust hospital that has an adequate amount of operating reserves. So I kind of went a little bit faster than I expected to do it because I didn't really ask for many questions, but is that an adequate first step in what you guys needed to see?
Absolutely. Yeah, this was really helpful, really helpful. The level of detail that you provided, I think, gives the numbers a lot of credibility. And obviously you put a whole lot of thought in this. And I realize, you're crystal balling some of it, but this is what we needed to see of, do we think we can do this or not? And really helpful, Dave. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised too, because obviously that 34 million was a lot more of a bump than we were hoping for, and from the 19 million.
So I have a stupid question, or other board members probably have questions too, but I have a stupid question. If we can go back to line 17.
Okay. What page?
Line 17 of your original presentation.
Okay. There it is. Net income. Okay.
So total net income or loss for each year, and we look at, in 2023, 4.9, and 2024, 3.6, and so on. So for each of those years, 4, 3, 2, 2, and 1, that's $12 million. What happens to that money? Where's that money going? If we end up, we're ahead of our expenses by that much, that's the $12 million that we're short. Where is that money going?
Good question. This is one of the dilemmas of the. I'd have to have you in my class when I was an adjunct professor to go through the details of the difference between cash and accrual accounting. But just to give you an example, the 4.4 million that we showed in the audit for the currently finished year of 2022, over half of it was from prior year, which means the cash that actually came in prior year, but we showed it on the bottom line this year. So what ends up showing on the bottom line doesn't do a good job in explaining what happened to your cash balances, because it's especially in an organization like this where Chet played games with, didn't put it, money's coming in, he didn't post much of it to the bottom line, he showed it as payables.
Yeah.
So my point is, you can't go off of this number to know how your cash is changing, because there's so many pieces that relate to prior year.
Okay, so that's not our checking account balance.
No, net income is an accrual, and keep in mind there's two pieces missing on the income statement. We'll get into we'll do a little bit of healthcare finance 101. The two pieces missing is the principal that you pay on long-term debt, and that's as much as $1 million a year. That is cash out of the bank that doesn't show a reduction of your net income, but it's money that you have to pay out for your to pay on the principal of your debt. Doesn't show up on the income statement as an expense. On the favorable side, the one thing that doesn't show up on the income statement that also doesn't affect cash is the line item labeled depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. So the amounts here, for example, the 700,000 that shows up as an expense really was not a cash expense. So that helps the bottom line. But the big part for us that causes the difference between what net income is and how the bank balances change has to do with what I showed you at the very end, where I showed you the difference between how much was accrued, this here, where we had a $6 million gap between the amount of cash that actually came into what we showed on the bottom line. So it's because of how Chet did things, it's not a good way to try to figure out where your cash is going. That's why I had to pull all these statements together, cash flow, balance sheet, and income statement, so that you could really see what's really important, and that's your balance sheet cash number, which may or may not have anything to do with your bottom line net income, because it has to do with it doesn't accurately reflect it unless the CFO, when the money comes in, shows it as adding to the bottom line. And in many cases, until you're sure you don't have to pay it back, you don't put it on the bottom line yet. So that's what makes it confusing.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't give you a better answer.
No, I understand. Thank you. That's helpful.
I don't know, Tim, do you want to, is there any other way to explain it?
No, I think you did fine. I think we'll continue to refine that as we go forward.
Yeah, and part of why I went into the detail today is this is a model I believe in that doesn't necessarily mean every number on here is accurate, but what it means is I can keep fixing it. And what it does, every time I change a number, it automatically updates everything else, so I'll know what my ending balances will be in terms of the way the formulas work. So it's something that we can continue to refine and use as an ongoing tool.
So if we got our skilled nursing facilities census up to 74 by the end of next year, then would we avoid having to get the $10 million loan
That's a great example of something I could just plug into my model, and I give you that answer in about 10 minutes. But that's the kind of trade-offs you want to see. Can we give our people a 5% raise instead of a 2% raise if we accomplish XYZ on the revenue side? And those kind of things are you can do the what ifs and real easily, the power of Excel.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Board members, any questions, comments?
Well, that was going to be my next comment, Ross, was about the, working on the census before fiscal year 2027. Like even if you just got up to 50, 55 or 57 next year, that's, still an improvement. It'll also be interesting to see what goes on with, our competing hospitals right now, if we can't, fill that volume, so to speak.
Yeah. I've actually got a meeting with Jim Suver. He's coming out here to have lunch with me on Thursday.
Okay.
So we'll get a little better picture of what's going on out there.
Okay, cool.
Dave, I know you don't like to look past left of 20. If you go from 10 to 20, you find the average that he did was 69, which is good.
Yes.
I mean, it was awesome. How we fell down to 46, I guess COVID had something to do with it.
Had a lot to do.
But we should back up to 69 easy.
Exactly. I think it should be doable. And that's why I made that the what I call low-hanging fruit. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think Tim can do it twice. That'd be 138 or something.
There you go.
I think that's how we continue to turn the pressure up on Tim and the staff.
And it's now if we get FEMA, we don't need to do anything. We can just have parties all day.
We need to work on FEMA.
Now you're dreaming.
Yeah, but sometimes it's fun to dream just a little.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but the crash hurts.
Oh, I'll be very disappointed in August if we don't, and I'll be elated if we do.
Yep.
It's one of those things where we gave it our best shot, and it's it meets all the criteria. So it's just a matter of seeing, where they disperse the money.
Yep.
Yeah, and I decided to do a FEMA approval pro forma, and it was like 10 to 12 million left in the bank instead of the 6 million. So, that was a nice picture in terms of having a comfort level of having robust reserves that you can take advantage of opportunities and not have to hesitate when new things come up and new purchases are available.
Correct. There's a lot of opportunities for enhancements to our services for the community, but
Okay.
Catherine, Jean, comments?
I just. You're gonna leave me off?
I didn't.
No, he said.
Talking over each other. I couldn't
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. I'm with Dave. Dave, you're doing an awesome job. You know how to deal with those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me on this one because I put so many hours into it.
I was gonna ask you if
It
you
was
had to pay.
well worth it.
I just wanted to say that I'm amazed at the work Bob keeps having to put in. I mean, I used to, a lot of things I would understand and a lot of things I didn't, but the hoops when it comes to permits and stuff have been a learning lesson. Not only with the hospital, but personally also, and it's a nightmare. But, so thank you for the hoops that you're jumping through. I appreciate that. Dave, I like your layout and always changing and keeping it up to date and current with the things we ask you to do. But, and I hope we get some of those grants and the different things, but I think the census in the nursing center is, it is a no-brainer that if we do that, we'll have the funds and not have to count on other things. So hopefully we can keep getting that census up. But thank you.
Well, Dave, your presentation shows us that there is a path forward. Some of your assumptions are coming true and we're able to perform, according to your schedules, that this is actually still doable. And that's hopeful. That's it makes me feel a whole lot better about getting the construction project done. So I'm glad to see there's a path forward to getting this done. Or it's a viable plan B.
Yeah, and so you do understand too, because the FEMA required us to show all costs, even, money spent with the architect, all the things, quite a few million that's already been spent. If this project were to get approved, we get reimbursed 70% of that because that is all work that was done for this, but because it's included in this, we would be reimbursed for it.
Wow. Awesome. Great.
That's great.
Now to throw a little bit of cold water on this, where I will
Stop it.
Yeah, let's move on now.
I'm feeling guilty.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I gotta be Chet for a minute here. If we're backed into a corner without FEMA and without any contractor that is willing to move forward on a phase by phase basis, I'm going to be a little bit nervous if we have to pull that trigger sometime in 2023 for the full commitment at that stage. That's going to be a tough decision.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, I'll be requesting help with the RFP on that bidding process to make sure we do that in a way that allows them to, give us a good price, but still give us that ability to break it into the phases.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we move on to item H?
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks so much, Dave. Okay, item H, board member publicity. Jean, does this have to do with the website?
Yes.
Okay. What did you want to bring up?
Okay, I told at least 10 people through the elections, all that, people calling me. And they'd say, what can I do? I'd say, go to the board meetings. Not one of them is showing up. Carrie, are you there?
Hand this step out, I'll see if you can come out.
Can you bring?
We're-
Posted on there, Heidi? No, okay.
we're discouraging people from coming. You go on there, you open up the website, you got to all the way to the top, all the way over to the right, where it would normally be contact us or something stupid.
Mhm.
That's where you got to go. That is stupid. We need to have one, the names of board members on there, their phone numbers, an invitation to the meeting up front, right there in their face. We're making it impossible for them to find us. I would like to see Debbie revise it to where something like that and the board approve it. Does any board member not want to have the public come? Fred,
Oh, they're invited now.
how are they invited? Open your eyes up, Fred.
So I went to the website today.
Listen to me. Pardon me?
I went to the website today to get my minutes. And right on the front of the website, up on the top, has the board meetings. It has a button for board meetings.
All right, and right. Who's gonna look there?
Yes.
You got all those big deals down there to the website you went to that you would click on. You don't go all the way to the top to the right. Where's Carrie at?
Why?
Had another meeting at 2:30.
So what you're saying is you would prefer to see a radio button directly on the front web page with our information.
That's exactly right. Each board member for that month and the board members and their phone numbers. We need to invite the public. The public is going to be the one that helps us. We have stay away from us public right now. We got to stop that. The public is the one that will get us out of trouble. Let them do it. We're not inviting them. We're not letting them do it.
I'll say this because I've been on a lot of websites working on this FEMA thing. And that is relatively standard, but I agree with you. It should be.
Don't agree with me.
No, I agree with you from the standpoint, it would not hurt to have it a little more obvious on the page.
Okay.
But many websites, I go to the top and I scroll across and I click on and I bring down the
Yeah, but
links, et cetera.
you do that.
Understood. I'm only saying that process is very common. I'm not saying it's where we should be. I'm agreeing with you. It might be better to have it a little more
Okay.
obvious.
Will you guys agree to let Debbie look at having a radio button and maybe the board members' names and phone numbers to where, when you first open it up, to where we're inviting, your publicity,
Well,
right?
think of the stuff, there's a button that you push, I don't know offhand, because I don't look at it all the time. It goes about us, it has your pictures there. It does not. have-
Okay, but we wanted to run the radio button when they first go in there. They don't know
Just wanting
nothing.
it more
How do
obvious.
they find it?
We can work on something. We'll come back with some ideas. Then let you see them,
Okay,
okay?
that's all, Russ, thank you.
Well, I want to have a discussion part of this. You brought it up, but I've got my 2 cents I'd like to share.
Okay,
You know, when I looked at the website and looked for where the board meeting information is, sorry, turn this off. It's the very first thing my eye goes to, board meetings.
but you look at things different. I'm talking about the public. The public is not used to looking at what you're looking at. You can't tell me the public is gonna go all the way to the top, all the way to the right, where it normally says, contact us or some stupid stuff.
Okay,
What this, Gene,
What's to open it for?
So
Gene,
let me add my 2 cents, and maybe you don't agree with my perspective, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Well, I want to hear it.
It says board meetings right there at the top. If I'm looking for where the board meetings are and I start at the top and work down, I don't have to work down at all because it's right there. So I click on that. And
So you're one of the ones that don't want the public involved.
Oh, gosh.
if you're just going to say stuff like that, why don't you just wait until I'm done rather than interject your nastiness?
Okay,
And then it has the agenda and the minutes. and you can click on any of those to see the agenda or the minutes or watch the video. There's 2 clicks. You click on this website and it's 2 clicks and you're watching a board meeting. Now, I don't know, if you want a radio button on there, I'm sure that can be done.
Ross, can I just pull it up?
I can't imagine this being any more accessible.
Okay, pull it up.
And I agree with Ross completely. I mean, we spent some time making sure that, this was very easily accessible. It's 1 click away for anybody who wants. It's front and center. So we'll just look at it real quick.
So what he's talking about, at the very top where it says.
No, don't hit it. Let him pull the screen up.
Okay, so right here, board meeting.
Okay. Now listen, stop right there. Give me a break. Agenda, what's that say? Did you click it?
I click board.
Unclick it.
Go back.
Go back. I'm saying what you see when you first go in there. It's pure stupid.
Do you want to share the screen for those that are remoting in?
Yes.
I'm on it.
I'm on it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, well, that's fine then.
Yeah.
Oops. So what's the problem, Gene?
Okay, go to the screen.
Which one?
Okay, the first screen that you get to.
That's it,
The
right?
web,
Okay.
This is the web page. It's where we're at. It's interactive video on the front.
Okay, now what does it say? It says,
Terry?
whenever you go into a site like that, I look at dedicate to health community and health services. I don't go up there and look to the right.
Okay.
Give me a break.
This website is not dedicated to advertising board meetings. The board meetings are available front
Well,
and center.
let's change it.
That's not the way we want it.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
This
hospital is not for the
How does
damn
the
board.
public gonna know how to get in here?
I've been using the same
You
website.
know how to get
Well,
there.
can you let me finish a damn, Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
Okay,
What are you getting so defensive for?
because nobody can get into the board.
I talk
meetings.
to people out in the public all the time too, Gene, that say, we can go to the website, we see it advertised on Facebook. If people can't go to a meeting at 1 o'clock, that's not my problem.
Well, then we should change it back to 6 o'clock if we.
Well,
need
even
to know.
when at 6 o'clock, we still didn't get the attendance. Well, I mean, before
We still
COVID.
have the video that people can watch too, and that's why we recorded it and put it out there so people can see it even if they can't make the 1 o'clock.
So out of all of this here, they are gonna find that little board meeting spot.
So if you're wanting,
We can make the lettering bigger and then make it. stand
Harry,
out. The font.
Harry, show the screen up so we're all talking about the same thing at the same time. If you would, put the website up on the Zoom.
You guys got it?
If we don't want the public involved, we should just say,
I don't know who's saying not have the public involved.
with that little button up there, they're saying that.
I guess the question is somebody from the public complaining that they're unable to get to the board meeting?
Yes. 2 of them came back and said they couldn't find it.
So if I go to this website as a user and I'm looking for information about board meetings and it says right there at the top, board meetings, isn't that
You're not gonna look.
adequate?
First walk into a page, when you first go in, you look what's the big letters? That's the message.
Well, again, we're not advertising.
Unless I'm looking for board information and then there it is, it's right there.
The hospital is for medical services to the community, not, oh, come to a board meeting.
Okay,
That's
do we have
not, that's
a
not what
different-
anybody wants
Do
to
we have
see
a
when they,
different website for it? What do we
for
want?
what? For what?
For board meetings.
It's right there. It all has to be on the same site under the Brown Act. It all has to be posted on the same site.
The font could be larger.
You can change the font, maybe change it to board members and meetings.
Put a radio button there and it says board meetings. So what's the big deal?
I don't think the public gives a crap about board meetings.
And your wishes.
They care about health services that we're providing.
They care about their hospital going out of business. We've been pushing them away.
I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know where you get that.
I've been telling people to come to meetings
Okay.
ever since I've been on the board.
I'll talk to you again at the board meeting. I'm done here.
Well, maybe you're done, but I'm not done.
Okay, we'll keep going.
We're still talking about this agenda item.
We'll talk.
You're identifying some problem that doesn't even seem to exist.
You're talking
What problem are you trying to solve?
more participation in our hospital board meetings and activities.
Gene, I talk to people all the time. I don't disagree with you that public should, I think the public is important.
They're the ones that
But
will save us.
okay, well, just let me finish and then you can say what you want. I talk to people all the time and invite them all the time since I've been on this board. If they don't show up, I can't go to their house with a gun and say, come to the board meeting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Carrie is saying, he stood right there and said, we're not ever, that's hospital business. Carrie, are you still back there? That's hospital business. What are you talking about?
That we're not average, the hospital.
We're not advertising.
that-
That's hospital business. A board meeting is hospital business.
Sure.
It's not advertising, right?
It's not-
we're not advertising the board.
It's not a service we provide.
You didn't want to rate it because it's advertising.
Hey, Gene, direct your comments to the board members and not to staff, please. That's really inappropriate.
I'm returning his
The
comment.
board makes the decisions on this kind of content, not you.
I would rather talk about it at the board meeting than this.
We are at the board meeting. This is a board meeting.
Regular board meeting.
Why?
well, it's on the agenda. You put it on the agenda, so
Not for
we're
the board.
discussing.
Okay,
It's a-
okay,
it's a
I thought we could
special-
talk about it here. Apparently it would be better at a regular board meeting.
Well, we're talking about it now. It's not going to be on the board meeting agenda. So
Well,
say your piece.
I said it. We need to make it to where people can see us easier at our, not only board meeting, the meetings.
It's 2 clicks. It's right on the homepage. One click to board meetings, the second click, you're watching the meetings. I don't know how it could be more accessible.
You can't find it over to the right. What shows up there is dedicated health community and all that. That's what I look at when I go in there. I look at the big writing. I don't go looking for some little something on the right side.
So what if that font was larger?
I don't know how much difference, it could make a difference.
We can try. I mean, we can try for a while and see if we get more response to it. I agree, it is tiny font.
Yeah, I go to some sites where it's very hard to find things to click on. This looks relatively good, but the font could be larger. And I think then it would meet what you're wanting. That it would catch your eye when you open the page.
Let's do.
But it's there.
Let's have them.
Eugene, let me ask you a question.
Okay,
On the main tagline, as you drop your mouse across it and they highlight up, would you be happy if the board meeting, patient portal and so forth lit up as your mouse drew across it so it would draw attention to that button?
as long as that button was big enough to get attention.
I understand that. In other words, take your main tagline, hospital facility, healthcare, nursing, so on. As they drag the mouse across it, that button highlights on my screen.
That would be a good thing.
Would you like that on the upper board? Would that make you happy?
Yes, well, current body hospital facility, healthcare.
Yeah, these don't light up like.
See how, yeah, it's not.
Okay, just try anything.
And enlarge it and make them light up when you cross over them.
That would be good.
I'm fine with it. We can do that.
Okay. So be it.
I got one question left, Russ. Is there anybody in here that I haven't pissed off yet?
Today, or are you referring to it at all time?
No, I don't want to go back all times.
That's all right. You're still scoring pretty good.
Okay. Thank
I don't give you that much power, Gene. Sorry.
you.
You've been real nice to me today, Gene.
Oh, hush, Dave.
Oh,
So
God.
Gene, I'm not measuring public involvement in our meetings as any kind of performance of the board or the hospital district. And maybe you see that differently. But, you know, what I think, there's not public coming to the meetings screaming at us about some issues, probably because they're pretty happy with the way things are going. If people are dissatisfied, they'd show up at the meetings and let us know. And, you know, I spent 13 years on a school board, and that was generally the pattern. Nobody ever come to a board meeting unless something went wrong. And then you had a room full of parents going, what the heck? I think it's the same with the healthcare district. If people are happy with the way things are going, people aren't going to be involved. They don't need to be. So, you know, I don't think that your assumption, I guess it's an assumption that because people aren't showing up to the board meetings, there's something wrong with our website. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think we're doing a good job.
Could make it easier to get there. But
it couldn't be any easier. But whatever.
The public is going to be the one, if they're involved with us, they will own what we're doing and they'll help us. Right now, if something blows up, they're not going to be there.
Yeah, and if we had a public relations staff, somebody to help Debbie tell our story, a full-time person to write this and communicate with the public every day of the week, then maybe we would have a better rapport with the public. But you didn't want that to happen, did you?
That's a different story. Can we talk about that?
Well, we're bringing up public involvement.
The agenda.
And Ross, whenever I asked her to put it on there as better, easier to get into the board meetings, it turned into publicity. How did it do that? How is it publicity?
I don't think there was any ulterior motive there. I think that's just the language that Heidi chose to put it under.
How was it publicity?
That's how you told me to put it on
Okay.
there.
All right. But Carrie, can you look at something before the board meeting at what you want to present?
Do what?
Never mind, I'll ask.
I just didn't hear you all the way.
Make some changes before the December board meeting,
Yeah.
December 12th.
We have what you suggested.
some radio.
Yeah, we got
The radio button is just, it's just a
open up a
button.
little
That
bit.
wouldn't really be what you would
Okay,
want.
well, what you can do.
We'll
We'll do it
increase the
today.
font sizes. We'll see if we can highlight.
We can highlight it, but the design, it's going back, and this would be like how we present the website, right? Like there's been design to it so that it looks nice, it all flows well together. Lots of time has gone into it. And those little flashy things are oftentimes a very cheesy way to do something, right? And so we've steered away from that intentionally so that our website looks professionally. So some of the stuff that you're requesting,
Okay, let's see what you can do. You know what you're doing.
my opinion, it stays how it is.
Well, then let's see.
I will take a look at that.
Yeah, we can increase the font though.
We can do the color behind it as your path looks, and I'm fine with that too.
To where it flashes.
Well, that's the last time I'm gonna talk about that damn little button.
Well, you know, my 2 cents is I don't think the public cares about the hospital board. You know, unless they're angry about something, then they want to be able to identify who the members are and who they need to call. But when people are going to go to our website, they're looking for health services. They're looking for how do they access their health services and what we're providing. And I think that the little wording that we have up there at the very first line on our website provides that link to board information if people want it. But that's not generally what people are after. There may be some, but hey, it says board meetings. I'd click there if I didn't know. But okay, I'll stop beating dead horses.
I'll probably get some glasses. That might solve the whole problem.
So are you satisfied with this discussion? Because I don't want to put it on the board meeting. I want to end this now.
Right now I am, and we'll see what happens.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Right now, I'm satisfied where Carrie's gonna try to make some adjustments that might make it better.
Okay. And you can work directly with Tim and Carrie?
Yes.
Great. Okay, then that brings us to item I for adjournment. And unless there's any reason to keep going, I think we are adjourned.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Ross. Thank you, Dave, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.